Loving Father, by the power of your Spirit, may my words draw from your written word to be to us your living word, Jesus Christ. Amen. The parable that we heard in today's reading is one of Jesus' most famous parables, the parable of the sower. Why is it so famous? Well, the reason, I think, is that it's very simple, really, and also that Jesus tells us exactly what it means. So you really don't need me to say anything today, do you? But I also think it's a parable that really resonates with us at the moment. Let me modify the first verse a little bit to fit our context, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. Here we go. As the coronavirus pandemic eased off, Jesus went out of the house, but being careful to be socially distanced, he sat by the lake. Now, of course, I know that's poetic license, but it's important for those of us now able to leave our houses, having been stuck in for weeks, to know that Jesus is with us. But don't worry, for most of us the next stanza won't be the case. Such large crowds gathered around him. Jesus was a really popular teacher, and in fact, he still is. What did he teach about? Well, in this parable, he talks about farming or gardening, if you like. Very common things about us that we can all relate to. And perhaps some of us have sown some seeds, literally I mean, during the lockdown period, at this time when gardening and nature have never been so popular. It's been one of those things which has emerged from the pandemic, that people have gone back to nature, including gardens. That's a really, really brilliant thing. So we can probably imagine in our minds the sower sowing his seed, or her seed. Even though Jesus is describing a hot South Mediterranean terrain, we can still imagine the seed being scattered and the hope of the sower that a good harvest will come. Maybe you've sown some seeds and hoped that a really good harvest will come. I have to confess that I planted some runner beans, and they hardly grew at all, so I then had to buy some plants. But hopefully you've done better than me. Anyway, going back to the sower and the harvest, there are some problems that Jesus outlines, some enemies, if you like. And in this story, there's the birds, there's the sun, and there's the thorns. The birds represent the evil one, which is translated Satan in the equivalent passage of Mark, or the devil in Luke. And Satan comes from the Hebrew word for the accuser. Then there's the sun, that represents trouble or persecution, and there was plenty of that in the early church. And then there are those thorns that represent, Jesus tells us, the worries of this life or the deceitfulness of wealth. So there you are. Which one affects you the most, do you think? Birds, the devil? Sun, trouble or persecution? Or thorns, worries and wealth? Well, maybe the answer's different for each one of us, or different in different seasons of our lives. But when I look at these, it's the third one that I think affects us vastly as a society, and draws us away from our simple job of receiving the word and bearing loads of harvest. The worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth affects us massively in the West, in nearly every area of our lives, I think. We're surrounded by adverts everywhere telling us that if we were just that little bit richer, we would be that bit happier. Our culture loves to talk about celebrities. And have you ever come across a celebrity who's poor? And then we have ludicrously high house prices and rents that mean for young people it's nearly impossible not to focus on earning enough money just to get by. And that means that money isn't just deceitful in suggesting a route to happiness, but it's also a very real worry in that its absence suggests a route to destitution. I feel that I really understand this. I was born on a housing estate, a council estate. And when I was first married, I lived in a one-bedroom maisonette where we saved for 2 months to buy a spade to be able to dig in the front garden. Oh no, I can hear it coming. You were lucky. We had to drink the water in the puddles, and so on. But it's just that for years I remember the fear of losing it all. And that fear drove a real thirst to do really well at work. In short, it made me a great employee because I was highly motivated, and a poor disciple, because the same thing that was making me a good employee was tending to choke the seed like a thorn. Well, what I've found is there's only one way of dealing with worries about lack of money and the deceitfulness of too much of it, and that's to give it all away. Even if not all away, to give some of it away anyway. There's something that sets you free about generosity. Because when you give money away or stuff away, you're set free from the lie that everything will fall apart when you live off a bit less. Or the lie that money makes the world go around. Can you hear the tune? You know, it doesn't. The world is going to go around with or without money. I'd like to say God makes the world go around. We're entering a time when money is going to be in very short supply, I think, for some families, as a result of all the huge, vast borrowing that's happened to get us through this coronavirus pandemic. It's going to be in very short supply for some families, for charities, for churches, for local authorities, and the list will just go on and on, I think. And we have to ask, do we enter this time by squirreling away whatever we have now? Or are we going to be set free by generosity? Of course, generosity can take so many forms, but generosity in our hearts sets us free. Free to care about the seed in our lives bearing a fabulous harvest. Free to understand the good news of Jesus Christ, who fills us with life and accompanies us on our way and comforts us in sorrow. So I want to end this short reflection with a really simple challenge. Are you, like me, affected by the thorn of money, and what would it feel like to be set free from all that anxiety? Take a moment to just think about that, to just imagine it, and then turn to the next video, which is an interview with Sally Phillips. And Sally lives in Lenham, and she she's one of the two main people who helps to run our toddler group in Lenham. How has that seed borne a harvest in Sally's life? Amen.